Hello, everyone, and welcome to Remembering Mark Burchett. On July 12, 2014, we lost a dear friend and artist, Mark Burchett. Mark was a producer, son, director, husband, and a writer. Throughout his life, he was fortunate enough to pursue his love of B-movies. He was involved in such movies as Satanic Yuppies, hell-o-ween, Vamps, and Vamps 2. And his last project, he was actually involved in a Star Trek Phase 2. He directed an episode called Blood and Savagery. That's what he was working on shortly before he died. Mark was the kind of man that if you were stuck in a crowd of weirdos, aka filmmakers, he's the one you wanted to talk to. He was the anchor in the chaos of the film set and in real life. So tonight, I'm joined by many of his friends and colleagues to honor the films and the life of Mark Burchett. To my right, we have Zachary Riggins. And to my left, we have Mr. Chris Strobel. Welcome. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for organizing this.
Yeah, no problem.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, very much.
Mark was great. I've had so many conversations with him at SOFA, is that how you first came to know him?
I think SOFA is probably a way that a lot of folks got to know him. I think I actually met him on one of the sets. I'm trying to think back which one it was first.
He was on a lot of sets.
He was on a lot of sets. He was on.
Was it Chick Boxing?
I probably met him just before Chick Boxing. But I probably got to know him most in Chick Boxing, which is not a production that he actually directed, but he was around. His producing partner with B Plus was the director there, Mike Fox. Mm-hmm. And I was assisting on that. I had just moved to town, and Mike and Mark really kind of got me involved with the filmmaking community here. I mean, when I moved to town, I knew when I was looking where I was going to move my company, Cincinnati was a market I could see growing in the corporate world, and I hoped there was a filmmaking community. And then I met Mike and Mark, and I'm like, oh yeah, there is one, and a lot of that community came from Mark. And then most of our interactions after that came from being both in SOFA, on the board of SOFA, and then we made a couple of 48-hour films together as well.
I would say in the last 20 years, half the filmmakers in this area worked with Mark on one of their early projects. Like that was one of the first sets.
I think so. I mean, it's just very, he was a genuine kind of guy, a very welcoming kind of guy, just friendly. And so yeah, if you don't even have anything to do on the set, welcome you to the set. Mm-hmm. Come in, see who's there, because this is a small family. Filmmakers, the weirdos, the whatever you want to call us.
We've been called a lot of things.
And most of them are probably accurate. Yes. But he fostered that idea of the community, and I think that's a big part of his legacy here is the community, the family that has been here for the last 20 years. Comes directly through Mark.
I consider Mark the godfather of independent film in the area.
Oh yeah,
because he's the guy that people look to when they talk about independent film here in this town. So, and he nurtured many people. So, many of them. Kenny Niederbaumer for one, Jason Brown, they were all in Hollywood on big sets. So.
But yeah, it started with Mark.
With Mark.
And a lot of folks. That's how with this thing that we do, the community, the networking matters, and so the networking in Cincinnati, in many ways started through him.
Yeah, he was a connection to a lot of different areas. It all kind of went back to Mark in a lot of ways.
Right. I think that idea of genuine really comes to him. And when you were talking about his love of B movies, I mean, his company, his Mike's company is B plus. Yes, and it's an embracement of we make B movies plus. It's a little bit more than that. Yeah. It's a little bit, you take the B movie idea, and how do we make it a little bit deeper, a little more meaning, but still, it's still Vamps. It's still B movies, but there's something else to it. But then more than that, it's, it's that growth that comes out of it. And that
it was always in keeping with the genre.
Yeah, and a willing, happy embrace of that genre.
Yeah.
So, how did you first meet him?
I was sitting here trying to think. I think I met him about 95. I was going to work on Vamps 1, and so I was working with another guy in town who was shooting a project called Deadly Secrets. And somehow the lines got crossed there, and they had begun to shoot Vamps 1. And I wasn't involved with that. However, when Vamps 2 came around,
You're all about it.
I was all about it. I was involved big time, and and I was just starting my company, Gripmeister. So I only had a very few lights at that point, 1995. And by the time Vamps 2 came around, I had quite a few lights. So, and it started a lifelong relationship with him, and we were good friends. Yeah.
It's not often that an independent director gets to make a sequel
Yeah.
to one of their
Exactly.
movies. A lot of times they're lucky to make one movie, but
Yeah,
to actually make
exactly.
a sequel of it, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and that was one of the things with him, and when I transitioned into teaching, and we start talking about, can you really do this here? I mean, Mark was always a guy that, if you stick to what you want to do, you're true to it, you have talent, and you nurture the talent around you, he was able to make a living, augmented with other things, but part of it comes through that. He was one of the guys who had projects in the stores that you could go and buy or rent, and not just here but everywhere. And that's something that definitely inspires those aspiring filmmakers.
Mm-hmm. He was my biggest mentor on that because at the time, I guess independent film around here was really a fledgling thing. Just getting started, Sofa hadn't even been invented yet. So he was the thrust of all of that in the early 90s, I'd say. They get it all off the ground to make that machine go because there was nothing like that.
Yeah.
In town.
And we probably should define SOFA, the Southern Ohio Filmmakers Association.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that. I was like, lower third.
Yeah,
let's
what
say.
does that
Yeah.
mean? Yeah, so the Southern Ohio Filmmakers, and now there's the MOFA, the Mid Ohio, and there's one in Indy, and there's
Yeah.
all these things that are
Spawned
actually
from it.
that are
Yep.
really
Yep.
not exactly children, but friends of children of SOFA, and he and some others around here got it going, and then it's grown and it's grown, and we've actually both been on the board there and been on the board with Mark and
Right, Mark was president twice, I believe.
at least
Seems like he was president forever.
It
for
may be more
for
than that.
quite
Yeah.
a few years.
Yeah,
He was king of Sofa.
He was.
we go in 1 year cycles is how it's been at least for a while, and then vice president becomes the president, and there was a
Right.
period of time that we were back and forth, president and vice president together, and trying to continue the idea of this community and how do you make a living maybe doing whatever you make a living doing. Hopefully it's something in media, maybe it's not, but then how do you also feed your passion, grow your network, and that whole idea of the rising tide, bringing all the boats up, and all those filmmakers continue to come, and a lot of that comes through SOFA, a lot of that goes back to Mark.
Yeah.
No, this area would not be the same without him.
Yeah.
So,
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely.
like, so many things have changed. So, what was he like on set compared to off set?
A docile man. One of the calmest directors I think I've ever worked with. There was never any screaming, yelling, none of that. It was always, he had it in his mind. The images were in his mind. Almost like Hitchcock. He had done the movie, written usually the scripts, done the movie in his mind, so he was just kind of reliving what he had done for months in advance. So, and he had willing actors, and most of the actors weren't giving him a whole lot of headache, so he didn't have to pull rank or pull them aside or, and talk nasty to him, as often has to happen sometimes on bigger sets. So there was none of that. So he was a very calm man. His commands were clear, his direction was clear, everybody understood when he wanted. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Hitchcock. Now, Hitchcock, when he was on sets, they always said that he was bored. But Mark wasn't like that.
No, he was not. He was an energy field when he was on the set. Hitchcock was more of the guy who was bored. He was sleeping behind the camera, that
Yeah.
type of a guy.
But Mark just enjoyed the whole experience.
He loved being on the set.
It was almost like
The
an
whole
amusement park.
experience. Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. In a sense, yeah. It could be amusing.
Amongst
Yeah.
the stress.
Yes. But Vamps 2 was their biggest production. It was bigger than Vamps 1, and I think Vamps 1 they had only a very few lights, and by that time I had grown into a 2-ton grip truck, so I brought a bunch of lights and was very
You could
happy.
see all those vampires.
Yeah, right. You could
That's
see
like
everything
that,
you
right?
wanted to see.
Yeah.
It was all lit.
We were talking about him as a director. I can chime in a little bit more as a writer and producer. We did a couple of 48s together, and I ended up directing those two, but we both wrote and produced, and that was, from a producing point of view, you know, it was great to have another guy who knew what goes into making a set work, so that when I'm working on the scene that's at hand, and he would come in and chime and help, but the resources that he could pull together and then make sure the next one's ready, and you just know that, all right, we're going to that set next. We knew, especially 48 hours, you have to be able to move quick.
Yeah.
We knew that, you know, when we move over, it's ready. There's nothing that needs to be done, and he's already started coaching the actors on what needs to happen if it's new actors that aren't in the scene that we're in, and it's, you know, and again, it's that kind of that calm. It's a fun, loving, energetic, but a calm, and that's an interesting way of dealing on a set, and he did very well. with that.
Almost a nurturing
Yeah,
of everyone on the set. So yeah.
man, good guy.
So you actually wrote with him.
Yeah.
So okay. What was that like? How was he with ideas and just?
Oh yeah, it's fun because we wouldn't work in the same. We tried to work in the same room at one point, but he had cats, and I sneezed too much, so I left.
You had the same problem. So did I.
Yeah, so yeah,
I would
I
get to his
couldn't
front door.
take his cats.
I couldn't even knock on the front door without starting to sneeze. Literally.
Yeah, and he loved the cats. So yeah, we would trade scripts back and forth electronically, and
So you guys were in the same house.
no, actually, I ended up even
Okay.
going home,
Okay.
which was good because, you know, 48-hour project, you're writing until 3 or 4 in the morning until you
Right.
sleep for 2 hours and come back and start doing it. So yeah, we would trade scripts back and forth, looking at different portions of where the story's going to go. We'd map out where it was going to go, and he would take a section, I would take a section, then we'd swap them, and then rewrite each other's to be able to try and get a unified voice between them, so that wasn't kind of in chunks. And then once we're happy with it, we'd nap for a little bit and then go on and then take our different roles as we moved past that. The last one, unfortunately, was the first time he went in the hospital and wasn't able. He went in the hospital after writing it. It was one of those things that was just that was difficult because we didn't know where he was because suddenly he was just not there.
Oh, wow.
And we found out. This was years ago. But they found out what happened, and that he was in the hospital for the first time there.
Did you find out like after the 48? Or
It was actually after we turned it in. We'd try to call him, and he's not answering.
He was in the hospital at that point.
Yeah. He felt terrible about it, and we're like, it's okay. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
We got it. It's
Yeah.
all right. You're
You have a good
really
excuse,
important. This
like,
is what's important.
so,
and
yeah.
then he's that's the concern. That idea about what the project is. He gets that. He got that.
Right. The project is number one.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for being on the show.
Oh, man.
Do you have any other final thoughts about Mark or?
No, the fact that, I mean, you've said that you didn't know him that well. You knew him, you talked to him a lot,
Yeah.
but
Oh, yeah.
the fact that you, who may not have known him like we did, wanted to make sure that this happened, that says a lot about him.
I just thought he was a really cool guy.
Exactly,
I knew
exactly, and that's
everyone
the thing.
knew him, and I just thought there should be something.
And that's what I mean. That speaks to him. It speaks to you too. But
Yeah,
yeah, it speaks
sure.
to him, and that's that's what Mark is. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys. We're going to actually show some clips from his films during the break, and when we come back, we'll have more guests.
What is the movie about?
Well, it's a sequel to a movie we did here in Cincinnati back in 1995 and was released in 96 called Vamp's Deadly Dream Girls, which was about a group of vampire strippers, essentially. And it's actually gone on to quite a bit of cult success. They just released it on DVD. Our distributor thought that it was worthy of that, so we thought a sequel was in order, and we're taking some of those characters and sort of propelling the story forward and giving it kind of a new twist.
Okay, what about this one? Vampires are by definition dead. Your girlfriend is a vampire, therefore, are you a necrophiliac?
I'm wondering if I'm doing the right thing. You know, an ex-priest and a vampire.
A vampire stripper.
There's just something about a man with handfuls of money.
We got a real problem on our hands.
You're in great danger, Heather.
Have you ever heard of the prophecy of the Redeemer?
You've made a powerful enemy, Heather. Her name is Elizabeth.
I would love to rip them apart for what they did to Randy.
If I were to use one word to describe her, it would be cruel.
This stuff was more entertaining when vampires were make-believe.
Listen, man, you gotta get out of here. They're gonna kill you, you moron.
You think a couple classes at the Y can equip you to defeat me?
I think vampires are just so cool, you know?
Vampires are bad. Really, really bad. They hurt people, they kill people. They should all be eliminated from the face of the earth via a holy water enema.
Mistress, this head came off. Can I keep it?
With my partner Mike Fox, we had been planning and hoping to make a movie since way back when we were in high school. And we finally, about 1995, decided that nobody was going to end up paying us $1 million to make a movie, so we just marshaled up our own resources, spent our own money, and went out to acquire the most talented people we could and their services to try and present what we hope would be an entertaining movie.
Hi, and welcome back to Remembering Mark Burchett. I'm now joined by Paul Morris and Jeff Barklage. Welcome.
Hi, thanks.
Hello.
Thanks for having this. This is nice.
Good. No, I've really enjoyed the stories from the first half of the show. So you knew him, though, from high school.
Yeah, I met him in '77. Yeah, plays and stuff. I got to know him really well when he was directing their student production. They had never done a student production, so this was like the students wrote, produced, directed it, built the sets, all that stuff. And Mark that was Mark's sort of first taste in directing. He did a sequel to MASH, which was basically a hodgepodge of some of the stuff from the early episodes that he mashed in together to, pun not intended, but, you know.
I would love to see that. That sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, he cast me because I was the only one that auditioned for Klinger. And nobody else wanted to get in the dress, so you know they gave that to me. So you know.
But you still had the audition.
Yeah, I still had to audition for it.
Just in case there's a cut out of the script. Right?
Yeah, I guess you know.
So has he changed much throughout the years?
As far as like love of movies, theater, that kind of stuff, always. Him and we also used to live in a same house back in the mid to late '80s. It was like a sort of a commune. I was all lived in this place, and you know we were always watching movies and stuff on a Friday, Saturday nights, and he was a manager at a movie theater for decades. It was like forever. I mean, so his love of movies he's always had that.
And you've worked with him on many projects.
Right. We met in '93 when he had a project that he had shot a trailer for called The Janitor from Hell. It's just some crazy.
I like that title. That's
wacko
good.
Janitor that you know spies on the girls and goes crazy and has a killing spree. It's sort of like a Freddy Krueger, but not quite supernatural.
He had the toilet plunger
Yeah.
that he stabbed them with the sharpened end.
Exactly. That was his weapon of choice. So
Yeah.
I guess he shot the trailer with you. And
Yeah, it was
Mike or Mark shot it, I guess.
Yeah, gosh, I don't remember who. Yeah,
They
who
came
that
to me,
was.
we wanted to shoot it now. We want a cameraman to shoot it. Who knows sort of what they're doing. And I was an up and coming young cameraman at that time, and I was like, oh, this sounds great. And he showed me the trailer. It looked fun, and the script was crazy, and it never happened. But it introduced us together, and we started that Vamps, series after that.
Oh, shortly after that?
Yeah, well, that's
a year or so
what.
after that.
Yeah, that's him and Mike were, trying to find somebody to fund Janitor from Hell, and they weren't finding anything. So they decided if they want to make a movie, they better just put up their own money. So Mark, they went and sort of dusted off some scripts, and they're like, okay, now what could we do that could be marketable, right? So we've got, people like vampires and people like strippers, so why don't we just mesh the two with these vampire strippers, and then you've got both markets covered with that. So
That's like half of film. So just
right, exactly. And so that's in '95 when they got Vamps off the ground, and that's what started.
And the thing was, they self-financed, but what I mean by that is that they paid for lunches. You know what I mean? They paid
bologna
for
sandwiches and Vamps.
Exactly. They paid for the tape stock, but as far as the cameras and the crew and the cast, and maybe they paid for fangs or something like that. Everything else was all us donating our time and energies together, because we sort of had a stake in the project, but we knew it wasn't going to be some financial windfall. But it was just a great experience to actually, for me, I wanted to do a narrative film, a feature-length film. I'd worked on a lot of shorts, a lot of commercials. I wanted to test myself and do a narrative film and see if I could, put it through its paces and work it out, and it did. And the thing was, unlike a normal movie where you're working 5 or 6 days in a week and you're working 7 to 15 weeks in a row, we worked 15 weekends in a row, more or less. On again, off again, kind of a situation. Mm-hmm. So. And we worked in abandoned strip clubs like La Madame's or Trixie's.
Yeah, it's now a theater.
Is it really?
Yeah, for plays.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we go in these places, and somehow they talk somebody into letting us get in. And we were in one place where they had a raid 2 years before by the police in Newport, I guess, and they locked the place up, padlocked it, and nobody had been in 2 years. So when we went in to shoot one day, it was kind of creepy because there's all mummified potato chips in the back, and it just stunk because it hadn't had any, drainage and whatever for years. And in the back room where we had to find the fuse box to turn everything on so we could electrify it to run our lights, all the strippers had been kicked out, and their purses and their street clothes and their everything was still sitting right there. Their driver's licenses and their, their shoes. It was really creepy.
That's awesome.
So it was something like, like a zombie movie. You walk in a couple years after everything went to hell. So
right.
It was kind of cool, but yet it was all crazy inside because it had all the velvet, dressings, and it had little twinkly lights everywhere, and it was a great location to shoot in.
Yeah, I might look for what house has been raided for easy sets.
Exactly. It was really quite cool for that.
So did his directing style change much throughout the projects you worked with?
Mark was always positive and full of energy, and no, I don't think so. I think he pretty much stayed the same.
Yeah,
I mean, he probably evolved to do less takes, that kind of a thing. But he didn't really, say, "Hey, it's fine, let's move on." I mean, he really put his heart into it, and took input when he could, and did a great job.
What kind of lessons did you learn on his sets?
Well, the big thing for me was that we oftentimes were shooting things out of sequence. We had makeup effects we had to be in the same room for multiple passages in the script. So you might have, something that took place on page 13 and then something on page 40 had to be shot in that same room. It might be a different day. It might go in the night. So we always had to keep continuity figured out on what wardrobe was in this section of the film. And was it daytime? Is this person bruised in the face here? Is their shirt torn here? You have to kind of keep track of that. And a lot of those guys, Mark and Mike, they were so full of energy, they sometimes overlooked some of that stuff. And I remember shooting a couple scenes with them and all of a sudden realizing, hey, you're supposed to have a bruise from a fight that took place the night before, but we haven't shot yet. That kind of a thing. You had to kind of work that stuff out. And, it's those things you just kind of live and learn throughout the process.
Zach and Chris were talking about Vamps 2, and that being a lot bigger production than Yuppies or the first Vamps. And when I walked in on set, I was amazed by everybody they had back there. I mean, when we did Vamps, it was a handful of us. They even had me like holding the mic, you know, like I'm the sound guy. Don't let it go in the red. What? Well, you know.
Like if you weren't in the shot.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But you know, it's and I remember that first day on set. You know, Mark was a little deer in the headlights kind of thing because this was sort of big time, and you know, I was taken aback by it, you know, and a lot of these people, they were getting better, you know. I mean, personally, I wouldn't be acting if Mark hadn't. When he wrote Vamps, he had the character of Seamus sort of after my personality, so he had me in mind. I just had to convince Mike Fox. That was the toughie. But Mark was always sort of in my corner for that. And I had done some acting in high school, but I hadn't done it for 12, 13 years. And thought I would go back to my life after doing it. And most of my stuff is, in the first one, is very raw. And I've gotten a lot better because I wanted to after that, you know, to get better. And because I saw that I could have moments of some good stuff. I just had to get around other people, and you know, if it wasn't for Mark giving me that first break, you know, and like I saw the people on Vamps 2 that were all working on sets, you know, he gave a lot of these people their first breaks, you know.
Yeah, and because you had a track record with Vamps 1, you know, people wanted to come on the set. But on Vamps 2, I mean, on Vamps 1, you know, we're trying to beg people to show up and whatever,
right.
And it was just tough because at that time there was nothing being shot in Cincinnati, nothing.
Nobody believed in it.
No, nothing at all.
Well, I made money on the back end on that.
So?
You know?
That is rare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In filmmaking.
Yeah, I did. You know, it was.
And because of that, Vamps 2, then people wanted to work on a film. You know, they wanted to experience it and stuff like that. And they knew that actually it was a film that wouldn't just sit in someone's, you know, closet at home. It actually would get some kind of, you know, track record and get out there and become a, you know, a film is distributed. So it worked out. And we had dollies and stuff, and we had actual lights, and we had real stuff on Vamps 2, and it just was a nice evolutionary process.
You had an actual dolly, maybe?
We had a dolly. We had a jib arm sometimes.
Oh,
we
wow.
We had Glory Ann. I mean, we had all kinds of stuff. So it was
many
great.
Toys. That's awesome. So you both worked on Satanic Yuppies.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Was that in between 1 and 2, or was that after?
Yeah, they did Vamps in '95, and they wanted to start cranking out a movie a year. So the next year they did Satanic Yuppies, which once we started shooting it, back in those days, there was just mom and pop video stores, right? So, you know, I thought Satanic Yuppies was a great title, but then they were like, you know, you got these mom and pop places, they don't like Satan, so we need to change the name of the movie to Evil Ambitions, which I thought was kind of stupid.
The most flat title.
I know, like, you know. So when we finally got distribution for Yuppies, which would have just been like '05, it's sort of the ugly stepchild Yuppies is, because I'm the main character, and there's like not a lot of naked, there's no stripper vampires, you know. It's just this guy and
That doesn't sound like a Mark movie.
No, I know.
Well, the thing was, that was based on the original Kolchak the Night Stalker TV series. Remember that with Darren McGavin?
Yeah.
That's your character.
Pete McGavin was the character. Yeah. So, you know, when people watch that, if they're fans of the Night Stalker, which Mark was a huge fan of, you know, you'll catch the references, Vincenzo's Restaurant. And,
exactly, yeah.
You know, my character's name and, yeah.
And you're always at a typewriter typing away a story and, you know, things happen. And
right.
Very much like that. I thought Amber was in the tub initially in that maybe that was Vamps 2.
That was Vamps 2. She was in the tub of blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I should watch them again.
It's been a while.
Well, they're available online if anybody watching this wants to check them
they
out.
are.
There are quite a few on there. There's a lot of streaming services you possibly get them through.
Yeah, I think they're on Netflix.
They're Netflix and on Amazon, I believe, streaming.
Oh,
what
and
I
on
heard,
Amazon, So no one has an excuse to miss them.
Right.
So he was definitely in the B movie genre.
Yeah.
You know, like lots of hot girls,
you know,
Yes.
supernatural elements.
Yeah,
or
all
whatever.
exploitation. That's all it was.
Yes,
Exploitation.
yeah.
Yes.
A way to, you know, get your craft out there.
Right,
So.
right. And he embraced it. B plus Productions.
Mhm.
What would you imagine a dream project of Mark's?
Well, I mean, the project he recently worked on.
Right, the Star Trek
The
piece.
Star Trek piece. He's a man.
That was, yeah, he's a humongous Star Trek, original series Star Trek fan. And there's these fellas in New York that make this show called Star Trek Phase 2, New Voyages. Basically taking the third season that ended the TV series in the 60s and making it the full 5-year mission. And then they're trying to do other stories and whatever. And Mark directed a couple of episodes. And he and I worked together at the end of July together in New York on another one of those projects. And he was trying to get together all the footage to figure out what he had to finish up for the episode he had directed 2 years before. And it was based on a 1967 episode where they find a planet, a parallel Earth that's stuck in, it's a 20th century Earth, but the Romans run it. You know, they're slaves and they have the gladiator fights and all this stuff. And the storyline follows the original storyline. And he shot everything, even with the original uniforms from the TV show. Yeah.
Yeah, they're real sticklers up there.
They are, yeah.
Yeah.
So he was wanting to finish that up. And he and I drove up and back from New York, so it was 14 hours each way in my van, and he talked a lot about trying to go out to some gravel pit. They were going to send the uniforms, you know, from Western costume out to him here in town, and we were going to go out and shoot a couple days in the gravel pit, probably with you carrying a machine gun. So,
maybe.
And it never happened, so, you know, hopefully it'll be finished, but...
I know he was working on doing Vamp's Resurrection.
Oh, a third one, making a trilogy. Okay.
Yeah, to sort of complete the story, and you know, it's because, and he was wanting to shoot it next year because that would be 20 years.
Since the first Vamp.
Since the first Vamps, yeah. But you know, yeah, Resurrection would have been. Was something he talked to me about a few times. He had contacted some of the big players, you know, Jeff and Amber, myself, and wanted to see if we were interested. And it was like, yeah, are you kidding? Well, it's like family, you know.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, he got you in a lot of his projects.
Yeah, he did.
Basically, probably about all of them. You had some involved.
Well, I mean, I wasn't like in hell-o-ween or the Trek thing, but yeah, I mean the B plus. Yeah, and those, yeah, he was definitely made me a leading man, you know. So yeah, I appreciate that.
What do you guys see as like his legacy, Mark?
It's a tough one. I don't know.
It is a tough one. I'm glad I'm asking it. So.
What do you think?
All of us sitting here now, I mean, just the love of making movies in the Cincinnati area, you know, which from 20 years ago when there was nothing, just what's being done around here now. You know, you hardly knew him, and yet you're giving him a tribute here. You know, there's so many other stories like that around that Mark touched with making those independent movies, and I think that's his legacy that he's going to leave here.
Yeah, I always enjoyed talking to him about films. Every time I went to a SOFA meeting, you know, I always had some kind of conversation with him. So.
And he knew his films. I mean, you could really,
oh yeah,
you couldn't stump him about anything.
Oh, yeah.
The genre, mostly sci-fi and horror. He knew it inside and out.
Oh yeah.
You know, he had a crazy passion, which was great.
All right, is there anything else you guys would like to say about Mark?
He's a wonderful guy. Really, he helped me out huge. You know, blossom in the career. And brought a lot of people that you know, gave him an opportunity. A lot of, you know, makeup people and you know, a lot of behind the scenes people who didn't have an opportunity to really get in the business. He allowed them that luxury to get in and actually get something that they could put on their resume.
Yeah.
You know.
He helped get you a start, and now you're working on all kinds of productions now. So.
Oh yeah, this Mr. Hollywood. I know.
He was
nice.
something else. Great guy. So full of energy and crazy.
Mike Fox can't. He couldn't be here. He's lives down in Florida, and he's out of the movie making business. And but he sent me a little note, something here. He wanted me to read. And this may sum up a lot for everybody. He says, Mark Burchett was not only a creative muse for many, he was simply the best person I ever knew. I'll miss him every day, but I'm fortunate that he'll be with me along the way, and I'll be a better person for knowing him. And yeah, that's...
They were an interesting combination, those two. It was
Oh,
a true
night
odd,
and
odd
day.
couple. True
Yeah,
odd
they
couple.
were. They were such an odd couple. You know, Mike was always the manic, and could like piss people off, and Mark was always the, okay, now just, you know, just calm down and, you know, ruffle, smooth out the feathers. Yeah, they were a great team.
Yeah, they totally were. Opposites attract, and that right there is example and point. It was, and they could make it work. You know, the energy flow between both of them. It was so erratic and bizarre, but it worked great. So.
Yeah, sometimes you get those people who are just too much alike.
Right,
You know,
exactly.
like those
and
ones
too
that-
much of Mike would be too much, and
Oh,
too
that'd
much
be
of
way
Mark
too
would probably be too much.
It
so.
is too, you know. Mark's greatest strength was his compassion for people, and his biggest weakness was his compassion for people. You know, he loved people and he loved movies. You know.
All right. Well, I don't think I can end it better than that. So.
Very good.
If you guys want to check out his work, it's on Netflix and Amazon Prime, and you can find it online. Check out Satanic Yuppies, the real title. And thank you guys for being on. So
Hey, thanks for having us.
Mark has left a hole in the Cincinnati film scene that I don't think will be filled. So thank you.
Thank you.
This is your first solo directing project, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And has it been a dream come true for you, or?
Well, it's been a real eye-opener and a good learning experience, and I hope that it ends up looking good on screen.
Cool. Anything you want to add for your fans at home?
I'm not sure I have fans at home, but hi.
All right.
If you fall in that category, hi.
And for the rest?
And for the rest, sorry.